Maggie stared at her phone. It's just for family, Mom. You shouldn't come. Mot dong chun gan jan jong sap, mot kan kwa keo dai swat ka joy ba. She didn't blink for nearly a minute. The kitchen clock ticked behind her, its second hand crawling through silence, like a reminder that time still moved forward, even when the world had just slipped out from under her. Just 2 days ago, she had transferred the final payment to the contractor, the last installment for the new patio Ethan had wanted so badly. It was her gift, her silent contribution, like every other act of support she had offered since the day he was born. He hadn't replied. Not a single thank you. The summer sun filtered through the window panes, casting dappled shadows on the linoleum floor. Outside, birds chirped from the elm tree, cheerful and unaware. Inside, Maggie sat motionless in her little kitchen, as still as the tea cooling untouched by her side. She read the message again and again. It's just for family, Mom. You shouldn't come. Her thumb hovered over the screen, then dropped to her lap. A quiet breath escaped her lips, one she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Her eyes drifted to the corner of the room. There on the shelf sat a photo of her and Ethan, taken 20 years ago, in front of the very house he now lived in. Back then, she had just signed over the deed smiling, despite the nervous weight in her chest. "You're the future," she had told him. "I just need peace." Ethan had grinned, kissed her on the cheek, and promised, "You'll always have a room here." Now there wasn't even a chair. Her fingers trembled slightly as she placed the phone down. She wasn't angry, not yet. It was something far quieter, something harder to hold. She whispered, "So that's what I am now." The words floated into the stillness unanswered. She stood, pushing her palm gently against the table to steady herself. The movement made the air shift, unsettling a napkin that drifted to the floor. Maggie didn't pick it up. Her gaze was fixed on the far cabinet, the drawer she rarely opened. Her steps were slow, deliberate. When she reached it, her hand paused. The handle was cold, or perhaps her fingers were. With a quiet pull, the drawer slid open, revealing a tidy stack of documents she had nearly forgotten. Utility bills, mortgage statements, bank transactions, and near the bottom, a sealed envelope she had never dared to open. Papers she had printed but never read. Files labelled in her handwriting, careful, almost reluctant, as though part of her had always known they would matter someday. She sat back down at the table folder in hand, her thumb brushing over the creased edges. The tea had gone cold. She opened the drawer and pulled out an old folder financial papers account statements she had printed but never truly read. "You'll always have a room here. That's what Vanessa said a year ago. Now that room belonged to the housekeeper." The words echoed faintly in Maggie's mind as she unfolded another sheet from the folder. The text blurred for a moment, not from poor eyesight, but from something heavier. Each page felt like a breadcrumb, leading towards something she didn't yet understand. Her hands moved slowly, brushing over headings, numbers, signatures unfamiliar, and yet eerily familiar. She let the papers rest and leaned back in her chair. Her mind wandered uninvited to last summer, the day she brought the warm blackberry pie to the house on the hill for what turned out to be the last time. The driveway had just been repaved. The garden was reshaped modern. And the old oak bench she and Ethan had painted together when he was 10, gone. Vanessa met her at the door, smile, polite arms, never reaching out for a hug. "Oh, Maggie, you shouldn't have baked. The oven's been on all day." There was no warmth behind her words, just efficiency. Inside, Maggie had noticed the changes immediately. Curtains replaced pale and sheer. The dark rug Ethan had once spilled juice on gone. Even the family photo wall looked different. Vanessa's parents' vacation snapshots, baby pictures of their son, but none of Maggie. Not one. The living room table was new, too. Sleek, cold marble. More grown up, Vanessa had said. Maggie had smiled. Of course. It was their home now. That's what she had said when signing over the title. This is your future. I just need peace. The pie sat untouched during lunch, the kitchen filled with the clinking of forks and the hum of polite conversation. When Maggie reached to pour water, Vanessa quickly took the jug, saying, "Let me." Small things. All small things. The guest room Maggie once stayed in had been repainted. Beige, neutral. A cleaning cart stood outside its door. "The housekeeper lives in now," Ethan had mumbled when he noticed her hesitation. Still, Maggie kept her voice calm. After lunch, she said gently, "I'll head home tomorrow. No need to stay the night?" No one objected. No one asked her to stay. Vanessa only smiled already, rising to clear the table. "I'll pack up the guest things. You don't need to lift a finger." Later, Ethan had walked her to the car. But even then, there was no embrace, just a pat on the window and "Drive safe, Mom." Back in her kitchen, Maggie held one of the documents to the light. Her heart skipped. There it was, small and embedded deep in the text, "Durable power of attorney." Her signature floated at the bottom. She didn't remember signing that. Maggie discovered a detail in the paperwork, the words, "Durable power of attorney," something she didn't recall ever signing. "It's just a tax form, Mom." Vanessa had smiled, calm and casual, as she slid the papers across the table. A notary stood nearby, pen already in hand. Now Maggie could recall every stroke of her own signature, neat, practiced, obedient. She sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by a halo of soft morning light, the documents spread around her like broken pieces of trust. The words blurred again, not from tears, but from disbelief. One phrase caught the light more sharply than the others: financial access authorization. The phone buzzed in her hand. She had messaged Carol, her old friend, a retired clerk with sharp eyes and a memory for paperwork. "Carol," she said when the call connected, "what exactly does durable mean in legal terms?" A pause. "Then durable? You mean like in durable power of attorney?" Why, Maggie hesitated. "I found some papers I signed last year. Vanessa said they were just for taxes." Carol's voice flattened. "You signed legal documents you didn't read?" "I trusted them," Maggie whispered, barely recognizing her own voice. Silence. Then Carol's tone softened, laced with worry. "Maggie, if it's durable, that means they can make financial decisions for you and sometimes medical ones too, even if you're still capable." The words struck like cold rain. Maggie stood up slowly, walking to the sink, memories rising unbidden. That day last spring, Vanessa had everything organized: sticky notes, signature tags, even coffee already brewed. "Makes it easier for you, Mum," she'd said. "I know your hand cramps up if you have to hold a pen too long." The notary had smiled politely. "Just initial here, and one more." Ethan was there, but he hadn't looked up from his phone once. The whole thing had taken less than 10 minutes. Maggie had driven home with a slice of carrot cake wrapped in foil and a warm, hollow feeling she couldn't quite name. Now she returned to the present. Her fingers moved with purpose. She slid the laptop out from its corner and opened it for the first time in months. Log in her birthday. Password a combination of Ethan's name and the year he graduated. The bank account loaded. The balance was lower than she remembered, but that wasn't what made her chest tighten. It was a line item dated just last week. Property expense. $2,800. She stared at it. It wasn't her property anymore. Maggie opened her laptop for the first time in months and logged into her bank account. A strange transaction appeared. Property expense. $2,800. There it was again. Home upgrade, $2,800. Then another interior contractor won 150. Maggie had never authorized any of these. She leaned closer to the screen, eyes narrowed every line on the statement like a thread unraveling something bigger. The apartment around her was still. It was just past midnight, the only light came from her laptop. Outside, the city had gone quiet. Inside, something old in Maggie was waking up. The first transaction she had noticed might have been a mistake, but now there was a pattern. A string of charges, small but frequent. Landscaping, plumbing, decor. None of it hers. She opened the expanded details. There in a field she hadn't seen before, joint account holder, Vanessa Lane. Her hands stopped moving. The name pulsed back at her like a warning sign. Carol's video call lit up the corner of the screen. Maggie answered without words, just flipped the camera so Carol could see the transaction list. A pause. Then Carol's voice, sharper now. Wait. Is Vanessa listed as an authorized user? Maggie nodded, her throat dry. She has access to everything. Carol frowned. That doesn't happen automatically. Someone had to give her that. Maggie sat back, the realization thickening around her like fog. She had thought she was helping them. What she had done was open the gates and left them unguarded. Click. Another page loaded. A payment to a credit card bill not hers. Maggie hovered the cursor. It was Vanessa's personal Chase account, paid in full, from Maggie's retirement fund. I gave them the bricks to build their life, and they laid them over me. Maggie whispered, not expecting anyone to hear. Click. One more page. A header, loan pre-approval. Pending. Her eyes scanned faster. It was an application under both Ethan and Vanessa's names, using financial records pulled from Maggie's accounts. They weren't just borrowing from her. They were using her to secure their future. She looked up at the screen, her reflection faint in the black background. Not angry. Not yet. But something inside her was crystallizing a shift from confusion into resolve. Carol cleared her throat. Maggie, there's someone I used to work with at the company. Tom. He handled financial reviews, very sharp, very discreet. Maggie said nothing at first. Then she clicked Save As on the statement. She named the file Truth Part 1, PDF. And then she answered, Yes, I want to meet him. Carol suggested, There's someone I used to work with, used to handle financials for the company. His name's Tom. Want to meet him? I don't deal in suspicion, Ms. Lane. I deal in proof. Tom Huyn smiled faintly as he shook Maggie's hand, his grip firm but not forceful. The cafe was quiet, tucked into a shaded corner of a small plaza. Monday morning, sunlight filtered through tall windows, illuminating dust motes and coffee steam. Carol sat a few tables away, pretending to read eyes occasionally flicking toward Maggie. Tom pulled a sleek laptop from his satchel and gestured toward the USB drive Maggie had brought. May I? She handed it over without a word. Tom inserted the drive browse, arching slightly as the folders opened. You've done some sorting already. That's good. Maggie folded her hands. I started with what I could see. But I don't know what I'm missing. Tom clicked, scrolled, highlighted. You've got pattern behavior here, withdrawals spaced out in consistent sums. Always just under the flagging threshold. That's intentional. It's how people move money without raising red flags. Maggie leaned in. But I never noticed. The statements were probably filtered. Many people assume automatic summaries are full records. They're not. He clicked again. Here. See this? He turned the screen. A mortgage application dated 4 months ago. Maggie's name appeared in small font beneath a clause labeled Co-owner consent. Tom tapped the line. Did you sign this? Maggie stared. I've never seen that page in my life. Then it's forgery, Tom said simply, or misrepresentation if they tucked this into something you did sign. Her jaw tightened. They used me. Tom nodded, not kindly or cruelly, just as fact. And if you allow me, I can begin assembling a full report. Timeline, document analysis, digital footprint. He paused. But from now on, don't sign anything. And say nothing to them. Not yet. Maggie sat back. Her coffee had gone cold. She didn't care. Tom began printing snapshots from the file's key transactions, altered forms, permission slips with checkboxes Maggie had never ticked. He slid one toward her. It was a bank profile. Under account holders, the screen read, Co-owner, Vanessa L. Maggie's hand moved to the armrest, gripping tightly. Her lips parted, but no words came. Tom printed a screenshot and pointed at a name. Co-owner, Vanessa L. Maggie gripped the chair arms, silent. Maggie stepped into James Holloway's office, the door closing softly behind her. Years ago, he had told her, "Don't give it all away." She hadn't listened then. Now the words echoed louder than ever. The office was steeped in quiet dignity, a world of polished wood, leather-bound law books and framed black-and-white photographs of the town's past. Maggie took the seat opposite James, her folder of new evidence resting heavily on her lap. James looked up slowly, his face lined with years and wisdom. "Margaret," he said gently, using her full name as he always did. "It's been a while." "It has," Maggie replied, voice steady. "But I'm afraid this time it's serious." She unfolded the papers, laying them out carefully. Bank statements, forged signatures, mortgage applications, everything they had uncovered with Tom's help. James sighed, leaning back. "You signed a durable power of attorney. That term means the document stays in effect even if you become incapacitated." He glanced at Maggie's face. "It's notoriously difficult to revoke such documents once executed." Maggie swallowed her unease. "Is it impossible?" "Not impossible. Just complicated. But with the evidence you have, we can petition the court to void the documents if we prove coercion or fraud." James flipped through the folder again. "We'll also need to block any further financial access they have. I suggest establishing a trust with clear restrictions on access, and we must file to revoke the current medical and financial powers you signed." Maggie nodded determination, settling in her chest. This was the moment she had been waiting for. James placed a pen in front of her. "When you sign this, it will be different." Her hand trembled slightly, not with fear, but with the weight of knowing. "I signed before because I trusted them. Now I sign because I know." James smiled, a rare softness in his eyes. "That's the difference." Then he leaned in and asked quietly, "Do you want them to know what you're doing?" Maggie considered the question, then shook her head. "Silence gives them false confidence," she said. "They won't see it coming." James nodded in agreement. "Very well." We proceed quietly. Her journey from suspicion to action was no longer a whisper, it was a statement. James asked, "Do you want them to know?" Maggie answered, "No, sir." Silence makes them more careless. Henry Lane was never the type to leave loose ends, the man said, his voice calm, but without a smile. Maggie stood quietly in the dim light of the old law office. The walls, lined with dark wooden panels, seemed to absorb the weight of years gone by, much like Maggie herself. The faded carpet beneath her feet carried the footsteps of countless stories, but today it carried hers. She had arrived unannounced, clutching the file she had been gathering, evidence letters, bank statements, fragments of a life unraveling. The assistant at the front desk was about to ask her to make an appointment when the door to a back room creaked open. An elderly man stepped out. His eyes sharpened as he took in Maggie's name. "You're Margaret Lane," he said, with a gentle nod. Henry's wife. The assistant, Lucy, quickly stepped aside, but Maggie's gaze remained fixed on the man. Mr. Ellison, retired, now had been Henry's lawyer for decades. His memory was sharp, his demeanor measured. Henry was a meticulous man, he continued. No loose ends, especially when it came to his will. Inside the small office, shelves filled with leather-bound volumes framed the scene. The light from the window caught the dust in the air, revealing the slow passage of time, a mirror to the slow awakening within Maggie. Mr. Ellison led her to a filing cabinet and pulled out a worn folder. Inside lay the original will, the one Henry had drafted years before, untainted, unaltered, the true testament of his intentions. Maggie traced her finger over the document, seeing her name clearly listed as the sole beneficiary. But what if the copies have been changed? She asked quietly. The old lawyer looked at her with steady eyes. The original will is the legal foundation, as long as it hasn't been properly revoked or superseded. Copies can be forged or manipulated, but the original, that remains. Relief mingled with resolve in Maggie's chest. She requested a certified copy, a safeguard for the battles ahead. Lucy prepared the necessary paperwork, and Mr. Ellison arranged to have a scanned version sent directly to Maggie's private email, one her family would never know about. As Maggie stepped out into the late afternoon, a gust of wind swept through the street. Dry leaves scattered at her feet in a silent dance. Without turning back, she walked forward, the weight of the past settling behind her, but the path ahead illuminated by quiet determination. As she left the office, a gust of wind scattered old leaves at her feet, and she didn't stop to look back. The Thanksgiving table had every place set except one. Maggie hesitated at the entrance to David's dining room. The house was warm and fragrant, with roasted turkey and spiced cider, but the air felt cold around her. She could see the polished oak table laid out perfectly shining silverware, crystal glasses, linen napkins folded like delicate origami. Her chair sat at the far end, deliberately distant from the clustered warmth of the family. The room buzzed with half-hearted laughter and clinking glasses, but Maggie felt the silence that fell around her like a shadow. Vanessa's voice cut through the room, sharp and clipped. "Maggie, don't forget to start with the salad fork. It's the one on the far left." Her smile was tight, practiced, as if teaching a child unfamiliar with etiquette. Maggie simply nodded, taking her seat. She watched Vanessa glide through the room, orchestrating the conversation with a firm but subtle hand, like a conductor guiding a strained symphony. David sat across his smile, polite but distant. "It's important to keep the estate organized," he said, casually swirling wine in his glass. "Everything must be arranged clearly, so there's no confusion down the road." Maggie's eyes met his, steady and clear. "Your father's wishes will be honored soon enough." From the corner of her eye, she saw Emily, her young granddaughter, slip from the crowd and take the seat beside her. Without a word, Emily reached out and gently took Maggie's hand. For a moment, the coldness melted, replaced by a fragile warmth. The meal continued with practiced civility, but beneath the surface lay currents Maggie could feel, but not yet see. Then, as if the air itself had shifted, Vanessa's fork slipped from her grasp, clattering onto the polished floor. Every head turned. Vanessa's cheeks flushed a crack in the carefully maintained facade. Maggie allowed herself a small, knowing smile. The empty seat at the table was no longer invisible. And for the first time, Vanessa dropped her fork. "Grandma, Daddy said your house will be ours soon, but I thought it's already yours." Maggie froze for a heartbeat, the words hanging in the crisp, late afternoon air. Emily's innocent voice was like a pebble dropped into still water, rippling outward and striking a hidden truth beneath the surface. They sat quietly on a weathered park bench not far from Maggie's apartment. The golden hues of Thanksgiving's fading light painted the trees, and the soft breeze carried faint laughter from distant families enjoying their holiday. Maggie reached out and gently squeezed Emily's small hand. "What did Daddy say exactly?" she asked softly, careful not to unsettle the child. Emily's eyes grew wide, her brows furrowed as she tried to recall. There was a meeting last night. Mommy and Daddy and some other grown-ups. David said the house is going to be theirs soon. Maggie's heart tightened, but her face remained composed, the calm mask she had perfected over the months. "Did they say anything about me?" Maggie asked, voice low but steady. Emily shook her head. "No, but Mommy told me not to tell anyone. She said some things a secret." A young mother pushing a stroller nearby glanced over, catching fragments of their conversation. She smiled kindly, but said nothing, sensing the quiet gravity in the words. Maggie's gaze drifted to Emily's earnest face, the unfiltered honesty of a child, laying bare the harshness of the world adults often try to conceal. "Did you see the lawyer?" Maggie continued. "The man who came to our house last night?" Emily nodded enthusiastically. "Yes. He wore a brown jacket and talked with big words. Mommy said he's important." Maggie allowed herself a faint smile. "Thank you for telling me, sweetheart. You're very brave." Emily squeezed her hand back. "Mommy says I shouldn't tell anyone else, but I don't think she's very nice." The breeze stirred fallen leaves at their feet as Maggie absorbed the truth. Her greatest ally was the only one who didn't know how to lie. And in that moment, Maggie realized her greatest ally was the only one who didn't know how to lie. The folder was unmarked, but everything inside it had her name. Maggie stepped quietly into her bedroom, the familiar scent of lavender lingering in the cool, dim air. The room was once her sanctuary, a place filled with soft memories of shared laughter and whispered dreams. Now it felt like a silent witness to the slow erosion of all she held dear. She moved toward her desk, the wooden surface cluttered with papers, a few unopened letters, and the usual odds and ends that had become markers of a life lived quietly but fully. Beneath the pile, something caught her eye, a manila folder, plain and without any label. Curious, she pulled it out. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened it. The pages inside bore her full name, meticulously typed across each header. As she sifted through the documents, her breath caught. There on one page was a digital signature, precise, flawless, but not her own. The words, "permanent transfer of all real estate assets," stared back at her in bold type. A cold wave washed over her. This wasn't just paperwork. It was a trap. Her mind drifted back to Henry's steady voice years ago in that same room. Every valid document must have your handwritten signature and the original seal. Anything else is a forgery. Maggie's eyes hardened. Whoever had left this folder here, whoever had slipped into her private space without permission, believed she was ignorant. But she was anything but. She closed the folder, slowly folding the corners with deliberate care. The room felt smaller now, but her resolve was growing. Without hesitation, she slid the folder into her drawer and locked it with a faint click. Tomorrow, she thought tomorrow this evidence would disappear. She placed the folder in her own drawer and locked it. Tomorrow, she would make it disappear. The invitation read, "For family only." Her name was nowhere to be found. Maggie had received a call earlier that week, a misdial from a distant cousin asking to confirm the time for the family gathering. The word family hung in the air like a gate slammed shut. Despite the exclusion, Maggie made a decision. She wouldn't announce her arrival. No calls, no warnings. She would come as she was an uninvited guest in a house that was once hers. The restaurant was elegant, tucked away in a quiet part of town. Crystal chandeliers cast a soft glow over linen-covered tables. The guests, dressed in their Sunday best, murmured quietly, sipping wine and sharing polite laughter. Vanessa had arranged everything meticulously, the seating, the menu, even the lighting. Maggie slipped through the entrance unnoticed, at first the click of her heels against marble flooring sounding too soft to break the thick silence that greeted her. Vanessa spotted her immediately. A tight smile spread across her lips. "Mother," she said, voice dripping with false warmth. "What a surprise to see you here." The room fell silent. No one rose to greet her. Maggie's eyes scanned the crowd, familiar faces, yet strangers in this moment. She nodded, cool and composed, and took the nearest empty chair, setting her purse gently by her side. A waiter soon brought her a glass of water, and she sipped slowly, eyes fixed on Vanessa. David began speaking, his tone smooth and rehearsed. "Family is about trust, about knowing who will stand by you no matter what." Maggie cleared her throat softly, a sound that drew all eyes. She looked directly into David's gaze, unwavering. Before he could continue, she reached into her purse and placed a small flash drive on the table right beside his wine glass. No words, just the weight of the unspoken challenge hanging in the air. And without a word, she placed a flash drive on the table right beside his wine glass. The footage was grainy, but the hand holding the pen was unmistakably hers, or so it seemed. Maggie sat alone in her study, the glow from the computer screen casting long shadows against the walls. The house was silent, save for the steady ticking of the old clock on the mantel. It was past midnight, but sleep was a stranger tonight. A new message from Lucy lit up the corner of the screen. "Sent you the extracted video files from the law office's security system. It's from 8 months ago. AI verification flags some inconsistencies. 82% mismatch in the signing hand." Maggie clicked play. The video flickered, revealing a dull-lit office papers stacked neatly on a polished desk. A figure sat wearing a dark blue cardigan that matched Maggie's favorite sweater. The hand reached out a pen poised above a document. The signature unfolded slowly, deliberate, but something was off. The ring on the finger was not hers, a simple gold band replaced by a slender silver one. The movement was slightly jerky, uneven, lacking the fluid confidence of her own handwriting. Maggie leaned forward, watching frame by frame. The lighting caused shadows that masked the signer's face, but the posture, the sleeve, the hand, it was an imposter meticulously crafted to deceive. Her fingers trembled as she saved the file, copying it to an encrypted drive she had prepared, passwords layered like fortress walls. The audio track carried faint murmurs. She increased the volume and caught a voice low-clipped, unmistakably David's. "She won't notice, it's just a signature." Her breath hitched. The betrayal stung deeper than any words. She closed the laptop gently, eyes scanning the quiet room. The weight of the evidence pressed down on her, but so did a growing resolve. "Then I guess you won't notice what comes next," she whispered, her voice steady yet fierce. Tomorrow she would make sure they did. Maggie leaned back, whispered to the empty room. "Then I guess you won't notice what comes next." For once, it was Maggie who sent out the invitations. The envelope had been sealed carefully, the handwriting deliberate and steady. It wasn't the usual summons from Vanessa or David demanding attendance or issuing ultimatums. This was different. When the family received Maggie's letter inviting them to a family meeting, surprise rippled through the clan. Vanessa was quick to object, her voice sharp with disdain, when she called Maggie. Why stir trouble? Just let it be. David, however, responded more pragmatically. Fine. Let's do it. Just to get it over with. Maggie chose the meeting room at the public library, a place neutral and far removed from the familiar battlegrounds of home or restaurant halls. The space was modest, but solemn, lined with rows of bookshelves and lit by soft fluorescent lights. Emily sat quietly beside Maggie, the youngest witness invited, silent but alert, her wide eyes reflecting the gravity of the occasion. As the others entered David with a forced smile, Vanessa trailing behind, tension radiating off them both. Maggie rose calmly. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steady, measured. "I did not summon you to ask for forgiveness. I am here to set the record straight." She gestured toward the projector. The USB drive she'd brought connected smoothly, and a short video clip played the same grainy footage of the forged signature. David's face paled, eyes flickering with the flicker of guilt and surprise. Maggie's gaze swept the room. "This is only a fraction of what I have. I will not waste time explaining. The facts speak for themselves." From the back of the room, a figure stepped forward, a representative from her legal counsel, face obscured but presence commanding. In their hands was a sealed envelope. "This document," the representative said, "will be submitted to the court upon Ms. Lane's instruction." Maggie's voice cut through the thick silence. "And I will, unless you undo what you've already tried to steal." Emily squeezed Maggie's hand gently, the silent strength of the next generation standing firm beside her. The meeting was over, but the battle was just beginning. "And I will, unless you undo what you've already tried to steal." It was tucked behind the old bookshelf, yellowed at the edges, and addressed simply, "For Margaret." The afternoon light filtered softly through dusty curtains, casting a warm glow over the faded pages of forgotten books. Maggie's fingers brushed against the letter as she rearranged the stacks on the shelf. The room smelled of aged wood and paper, a quiet witness to the countless evenings she and Henry had spent here reading side by side. She hesitated before unfolding the fragile paper, the ink faded but still legible. Henry's handwriting, steady and familiar, reached across the years. "My dearest Margaret, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer there to hold your hand or watch the seasons change with you." The letter continued, carrying the weight of a man's last worries. Henry wrote of his fears not for himself, but for Maggie. "I worry that once I'm gone, those around you might not treat you with the kindness and respect you deserve." He detailed the steps he had taken in secret, the will sealed away safely, the original documents guarded by trusted friends, and his choice to hire an impartial witness to oversee his final wishes. "I trust in your strength, Margaret. I trust you to protect what is ours, not just the house or money, but the memories and dignity we built together." Maggie's eyes lingered on the final words. "I believe you will not let others define the rest of your life." She read the letter 3 times each pass, deepening a quiet fire within her. There were no tears, only the subtle tremor of hands folding the paper gently and slipping it back into the drawer. The room settled into silence, but Maggie's breath was steady and sure. And just before she turned off the lamp, she whispered, "I'm not done either." And just before she turned off the lamp, she whispered, "I'm not done either." The dining table had 8 chairs, but only 7 were filled. Maggie entered David's home quietly, the scent of roasted vegetables and simmering herbs greeting her. The room was warm, softened by the gentle glow of candles flickering on the polished oak table. The air was thick with unspoken words. Emily, her young granddaughter, had arranged the dinner, a tentative peace offering, a fragile thread woven between fractured family ties. Vanessa sat across the table, her eyes tired and distant. She said nothing, neither welcoming nor hostile. The silence she maintained felt heavier than any argument. David's chair remained empty. Emily's small voice broke the quiet. "Daddy said he needs to be away for a few days. She glanced at Maggie, her gaze steady, carrying the weight of understanding beyond her years. Maggie did not ask why. Instead, she looked at the empty chair, imagining the spaces it once filled, conversations, laughter conflict, now gone silent, like a chapter closed. The family ate slowly, the clinking of cutlery the only soundtrack to the evening. Maggie felt a calm settle over her, a strange comfort in the stillness. After dinner, Emily looked up with curious eyes. "Grandma, do you forgive Daddy?" Maggie paused, then answered softly. "Forgiveness isn't for their peace of mind. It's for mine, so I can live on." She stood her fingers brushing the back of the empty chair with a reverence that spoke volumes. Without looking back, she walked toward the door, her head held high. No words were needed. The empty chair said everything. She stood up, touched the back of the empty chair, and walked out with her head high. The first sprouts broke through the soil, just as the sun rose, soft, silent, determined. Maggie knelt in the quiet garden behind her small house, fingers gently brushing the dark earth. The world around her was calm, bathed in the golden light of early morning. Birds sang softly from the trees, and a gentle breeze stirred the leaves overhead. This patch of earth was her sanctuary now, a place where time moved, slowly measured not in meetings or disputes, but in the tender growth of green shoots. Lucy stopped by, carrying a worn envelope. "This is the original will Mr. Henry left behind," she said softly, handing it to Maggie. The document had finally been recognized by the court, legally restoring Maggie's rightful inheritance. Maggie thanked her with a small smile, but didn't open the envelope. Instead, she placed it carefully into a drawer, preferring to keep it safe, yet out of sight. Later, she found a handwritten letter slipped beneath the garden gate. It was from Emily. "Grandma, I'll visit this weekend. I think I understand you better now." Maggie folded the note gently and tucked it into a blooming pot of lavender. It was not a framed photo or a legal paper that she chose to display, but this simple, quiet message of connection. As the breeze lifted the petals, Maggie closed her eyes and breathed deeply. The garden whispered secrets of resilience and hope. She watched the wind move through the garden and thought, some roots grow stronger when no one is watching. The journey had not ended with grand gestures or loud victories, but with the steady, silent reclaiming of herself. She watched the wind move through the garden and thought, some roots grow stronger when no one is watching. In the quiet aftermath, justice came not with fanfare, but with steady certainty. Maggie's journey was one of silent endurance transformed into deliberate truth, a testament that even the longest shadows of betrayal can be pierced by unwavering resolve. Justice may arrive late, but it resonates like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody. Sometimes it only takes one brave choice to break generations of silence and reclaim what was lost. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. Type 1 if you resonate with this story.